Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hey, everybody, it's Matt Truman. Tonight is March 16th, 2023, and I got some news stories to share with you. At the end, I'm going to share a little Ohio news, and then I'm going to share some news from my hometown, the Brick City, Huber Heights, Ohio. So first up, let's share something real quick. It is, let's see here. Oh, that went away. All right, so I'm going to share this from Washington Examiner. Military releases footage showing Russian fighter jet forcing down U.S. drone over Black Sea. Let's play this video from the Washington Examiner.
The U.S. military has released footage of two Russian fighter jet pilots and the U.S. drone they forced down.
This hazardous episode is a part of a pattern of aggressive and risky and unsafe actions by Russian pilots in international airspace.
The newly declassified video depicts critical moments in the mid-air incident. The video is from a camera on the MQ-9 Reaper drone. The Russian Su-27 approached the rear of the drone and began to release fuel as it passed the unmanned drone. The feed is briefly disrupted as the Russian fighter jet passed over the drone while continuing to release fuel. When it comes back seconds later, the propeller was visible and appeared undamaged. The Russian jet came back for another approach, once again releasing fuel as it got closer to the drone. This time, as the Russian jet got close, the feed cut for about 60 seconds, which occurred following impact. Once the camera resumed its video feed, the propeller appears damaged. The military was then forced to crash land the drone into the Black Sea, but not before they were able to wipe it of sensitive data, should it fall into the wrong hands, though they are hoping to recover it themselves.
The United States will continue to fly and to operate wherever international law allows.
All right, that was from the Washington Examiner. We're going to keep on trucking here with some more news and views. This is an interesting story out of Politico. Hunting rifles, really? China ships assault weapons and body armor to Russia. Oh, the team is starting to work. Hunting rifles, just hunting rifles and body armor, because I don't know. A deer's gonna get you. Chinese companies, including one connected to the government in Beijing, have sent Russian entities 1,000 assault rifles. What are these assault rifles? What are they? What are they chambered in? And other equipment that could be used for military purposes, including drone parts and body armor, according to trade and customs data obtained by Politico. Good job, Politico. The shipments took place between June and December of 2022, according to the data provided by Import Genius, a customs data aggregator. So December 2022. So last year, the end of last year, they sent all this stuff. Are they sending other things? China doesn't lie, right? Unreal. All right, folks. We're going to keep on trucking here. Got a lot of news to talk about. I have a few videos I'm going to play, but they're open source videos. C-SPAN and another website that I don't know if you're allowed to mention on the Facebooks or the YouTubes or wherever. Okay, here's an article out of the Western Journal. UN issues warning after 5,000 pounds of uranium disappears from war-torn country, which is Libya. But we'll read on here. Some 2.5 tons of natural uranium stored in a site in war-torn Libya have gone missing, the United Nations nuclear watchdog said Thursday, raising safety and proliferation concerns. Natural uranium can't immediately be used for energy production or bomb fuel, as the enrichment process typically requires the metal to be converted into gas, then later spun into centrifuges to reach the levels needed. However, each ton of natural uranium it obtained by a group with the technological means and resources can be refined to 12 pounds of weapons grade material over time, experts say. So where did they go? Let's see. After Libya was toppled, in part with the United States, remember Hillary Clinton? We came, we saw, we killed him, right? He's dead, or whatever she said. So that's an interesting story. So there's some uranium floating around. Who knows, right? All right. Next up, let's share this story, folks. We're going to keep chugging along here. Goldman Sachs, this is an interesting story. Yahoo Finance, Goldman boost U.S. recession odds after slashing GDP forecast. Oh, there's the video. Let's play it. We could possibly get dinged for it, but let's see.
I think that people around the world want to know if the problems within the U.S. are contained. How big is this? How many banks have the problem that SVB had of lending long, borrowing short, and therefore subjecting themselves to huge interest rate mismatches, and therefore the kind of problem they saw. Now, that's the source of the systemic risk in the United States. How many small and medium banks have that kind of exposure? And do any large banks have that kind of exposure? That's what they want to know, because anything that happens in the US doesn't stay in the US, it transmits across the world. Now, that said, I think the problems with Credit Suisse are a little different. Credit Suisse is a bank in search of a business, and it hasn't quite found that. And as a result, the turmoil in Europe, and to some extent amongst the big banks in the US, is how much exposure do you have to Credit Suisse if it melts down over the next few days? So that's a different concern from the interest rate risk exposure that is the concern among small and medium banks in the US.
All right. So that was a little video from Yahoo Finance. The video was by Brian Sozzi, Executive Director. We must give credit where credit is due. Okay. We're going to take that off. Let us... I wanted to play something before I played... I wanted to play a video before I played the drone footage that we saw where the drone was flying, the Russian jet came in. I wanted to play a video, so let me see if I can pull it up. It's from Brigadier General Patrick Ryder. Let's see here.
Ohio State residents.
First of all, I would like to highlight U.S. European Command's statement released earlier today confirming that 2 Russian Su-27 aircraft conducted unsafe and unprofessional intercept with a U.S. Air Force intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance unmanned MQ-9 aircraft that was operating within international airspace over the Black Sea today. To recap, at approximately 7:03 a.m. Central European time, one of the Russian Su-27 aircraft struck the propeller of the MQ-9, causing U.S. forces to have to bring the MQ-9 down in international waters. Several times before the collision, the Su-27s dumped fuel on and flew in front of the MQ-9 in a reckless and unprofessional manner. This incident demonstrates a lack of competence in addition to being unsafe and unprofessional. U.S. Air Forces in Europe, Air Forces Africa routinely fly aircraft throughout Europe over sovereign territory and throughout international airspace in coordination with applicable host nation and international laws. In order to bolster collective European defense and security, these missions support allied, partner, and U.S. national objectives. As the U.S. Air Forces in Europe, Air Forces Africa commander emphasized in European Command statement, Quote, U.S. and allied aircraft will continue to operate in international airspace, and we call on the Russians to conduct themselves professionally and safely. In separate news, Secretary Austin.
All right. I wanted to play that video to recap, to go back because it disappeared when I was hitting buttons. But that was Brigadier General Patrick Ryder talking about the incident between the Russian jet and our drone flying in international waters. All right, folks. And then we talked about the Goldman Sachs situation. So there's a lot of those big bankers, rating agencies like Moody's have come out to get ahead of this bank run that's happening all over the United States. I thought we were supposed to be good, right? That's happening a lot with governments lately, don't you think? We're good. We're good. But then there's another side of the whole story that we're not being told. Folks, prepare. Food, water, medicine, right? Food, water, and medicine. Prepare with that. Okay. Let's keep on trucking. Got a lot of news to get to in a short period of time. All right, so we did the Goldman Sachs thing. Here is a video, an interesting video from Bandot Video from Greg Reese. You guys know I like to play Greg Reese here on the broadcast. So here this goes. Well, if we can play it. All right. Well, this is odd. It's not letting me do what we need to do. Okay. I'm going to pull that up real quick. While I pull that up, let's play a video by Dr. Redfield that just came out, talking about what we all have been going through, the whole world, COVID-19. Let's play that video. It's on C-SPAN, so it's got to be good, right? To play.
As COVID-19 began to spread across the world, there were two competing hypotheses about the origin of this virus that needed to be viciously explored. The first hypothesis is the possibility that COVID-19 infections in humans were the result of a spillover event from nature. This is a situation in which the virus naturally mutates and becomes more transmissible from one species to another, in this case from bats to humans via an intermediate species. This is what happened in previous outbreaks of SARS and MERS and earlier coronaviruses that emerged from bats and spread through an intermediate animal. The second hypothesis is the possibility that the virus evolved in a laboratory involved in gain-of-function research. This is a type of research in which scientists seek to increase the transmissibility or pathogenicity of an organism in order to better understand that organism and inform preparedness efforts and the development of countermeasures such as therapeutics and vaccines. Under this theory, COVID infected the general population after it was accidentally leaked from a lab in China. From the earliest days of the pandemic, my view was both theories about the origin needed to be aggressively and thoroughly examined. Based on my initial analysis of the data, I came to believe, and I still believe today, that it indicates that COVID-19 more likely was the result of an accidental lab leak than a result of a natural spillover event. This conclusion is based primarily on the biology of the virus itself, including the rapid high infectivity for human-to-human transmission, which would then predict rapid evolution of new variants, as well as a number of other important factors, which also include the unusual actions in and around Wuhan in the fall of 2019, all of which I'm happy to discuss today. Even given the information that surfaced in the 3 years since the COVID-19 pandemic began, some have contended that there's really no point in investigating the origin of this virus. I strongly disagree. There is a global need to know what we are dealing with in COVID virus because it affects how we approach the problem to try to prevent the next pandemic. The understanding of the origin of COVID is critical to future science research, particularly as it affects ongoing ethical debate around gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function research has long been controversial within the scientific community. In my own opinion, COVID-19 pandemic presents a case study on the potential dangers of such research. While many believe that gain-of-function research is critical to get ahead of viruses by developing vaccines, in this case, I believe it was the exact opposite, unleashing a new virus to the world without any means of stopping it and resulting in the deaths of millions of people. Because of this, it's my opinion that we should call for a moratorium on gain-of-function research until we have a broader debate and we come to a consensus at a community about the value of gain-of-function research. This debate should not be limited to the scientific community. If the decision is to continue with gain-of-function research, then it must be determined how and where to conduct that research in a safe, responsible, and effective way. I thank you for inviting me here today. As we explore this important topic, I look forward to answering your questions.
All right. That was Dr. Redfield, Robert Redfield, former CDC director, right? If you've been listening, so we're new. I'm new at doing these videos on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter, right? And sometimes on Facebook. I share the YouTube or the Rumble video on Facebook at Truman's Town Hall Podcast. Here, let me put that up real quick, right? Truman's Town Hall Live. Listen to the pod. Okay, so if you've been listening, you know all about Dr. Robert Redfield because I've been talking about him since 2020, right? Maybe a little after. But he's the former CDC director. He's a virologist. He's an expert. Trust the experts. That's what we were told. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you folks. Just as an update, I wanted to play the video I'm about to play before this one, the Redfield video, but it fell off. Anyway, we're learning. We're new at these videos. The audio podcast is kind of polished. And we talked about the war in Ukraine and Russia before it even happened. We warned you. And we're warning you about a lot of stuff on this podcast, but you just have to listen and share. Share this podcast. All right. Let's share a video because why listen to me bloviate when we can watch something interesting? All right, this is a video from Greg Reese.
Weeks before the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, several executives sold off large shares of stock, while mainstream media tells its audience to invest in them. On March 9th, the day before the collapse, Israel's two largest banks pulled up to $1 billion out of SVB, while Peter Thiel's Founders Fund withdrew millions and advised their clients to do the same.
Donor.
The next day, there was a run on the bank, and Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. Is this evidence of a controlled demolition or a hasty one? The day before the collapse, a U.S. judge ordered J.P. Morgan Chase to turn over documents in a lawsuit accusing them of aiding in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation. The team behind this lawsuit was the same team who successfully exposed the involvement of Deutsche Bank, and they subpoenaed several other banks they believe were involved in sex trafficking, including Silicon Valley Bank and Bank Leumi, the Israeli bank that drained $1 billion out of SVB the day before it collapsed. Whatever the reason, the U.S. government's response threatens to collapse the world economy. The FDIC insures up to $250,000 for each depositor, but now they are going to cover all depositor losses. and they don't have enough to cover the $175 billion of SVB losses, let alone the trillions of dollars to be lost on the near horizon as banks across the world begin to break. The systemic risk among GSIBs, global systemically important banks, is that they are so deeply connected that when one falls, they will all follow. Much of the world's economy is already collapsing due to the actions of the US government and the Federal Reserve banking system. And much of the world has been preparing for the end of the US dollar as a world reserve currency. After all the smaller banks die, the people will be left with the central bank, and their solution is the CBDC. CBDC stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. With CBDC, there are no more options. Everyone's account is run directly through the central bank system.
As the financial system gets more controlling and more invasive, it's a little bit like bringing up a corral around us. And CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and vaccine passports or digital IDs are sort of the last shutting of the gate. It's hard for many people to imagine the risks here because we're so used to living with financial transaction freedom. And we don't understand that when this gate closes on us, we literally will be sitting in a system where the central banks believe that our assets belong to them and they can dictate where we can spend money and what we can spend money on. If you don't behave, you can have your money turned off.
There are 12 Federal Reserve banks, which are located in cities being considered for the 15-minute city model of the World Economic Forum. This is where it's all headed, and there isn't much pushback in the federal government. Utah Senator Mike Lee introduced the No CBDC Act last September, which will likely go nowhere. But we, the people, have much more sway over our local governments. An Oklahoma House committee unanimously passed a bill to protect Oklahomans from being forced to adopt a CBDC. It's time for we, the people, to unite with our neighbors and local communities and prepare to liberate ourselves from the central bank system. Recall our corrupt county officials and start looking into local barter and trade systems, because central bank digital currency is coming at us quickly and it equals financial enslavement. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
All right, that was Greg Reese from InfoWars. Can you play InfoWars on YouTube? I don't know. Hopefully you can. I thought Alex Jones could be on YouTube, but not have a channel. So I'm hoping so. Because that was an interesting report by Greg Reese, and I love it. I love it. All right, let's keep on trucking with the news, folks. Let's keep on trucking. Here's an interesting article. This article was out, Wired Magazine. Okay, so let me do this. Let me be little man down here. See me down here? All right. Wired Magazine. Why the future doesn't need us. Our most powerful 21st century technologies, robotics, genetic engineering, and nanotech are threatening to make humans an endangered species. Where are we at today, folks? This article was written April 1st, 2000 at 12 p.m. on Wired Magazine. I want you, here's homework. I always give homework on on these videos. Go read this article from 2000 and compare it, because I want you folks to be able to make your own mind up. That is so awesome, because I can sit here and talk and tell you my ideas all day and all night, but unless you can generate your own ideas, come up with your own thoughts, and kind of place the pieces in the right position for yourself, you'll never believe me. So I'm just going to give you this article. Look at this article from 2000, 23 years later. Look at today. There it is. Here, let me give you the first paragraph. For the moment, I became involved in the creation of new technologies Their ethical dimensions have concerned me, but it was only in the autumn of 1998 that I became anxiously aware of how great are the dangers facing us in the 21st century. I can date the onset of my unease to the day I met Ray Kurzweil, the diversely famous inventor of the first reading machine for the blind and many other amazing things. Folks, look up Ray Kurzweil's as well. Look up Ray Kurzweil as well. Okay, boom. Let's keep trucking here, folks, because there's a lot of stuff out there. I'll probably be putting out a video. Well, I know on Sunday. On Sunday, we are definitely going to be on here. Boom, look at the bottom scroll. The red rooster is the gospel message guy. But I just showed you Rooster and Doc Sunday Night Live. That's us. Anyway, let's keep trucking. We have some more interesting videos and articles and everything else. 2 more articles and then a final video. From Palladium, Governance Futurism. Our knowledge of history decays over time. March 7th, 2023. Folks, what you thought happened in the past never happened. Don't you know that? We got to change history up a little bit. That never happened. And if you thought it happened, well, your memory decays over time. I want you to read this article. As time passes, does our understanding of historical events get better or worse? It seems intuitive that something is harder to understand the longer ago it was. You probably have a relatively easy time understanding events from the presidency of Barack Obama, while contextualizing events and tracking down sources from the presidency of Woodrow Wilson. Okay, 2 Democrats. And in my opinion, Woodrow Wilson was the worst president in the United States ever in the history, over Joe Biden. Woodrow Wilson will require more work. Events from the reign of Henry VIII will be even more foreign, and they often suffer from large gaps in the historical record. What, are we supposed to revert back to being redcoats here in the United States? Folks, read that article. I'm not going to continue to read it. Palladium, Governance Futurism. Our knowledge of history decays over time. Check that out. Amazing. Amazing how they want you to think that what you think and know and read and studied in school, whether it be elementary school, the basic history, high school, college, maybe you're a historian watching this video. I don't know why you would be, but maybe you are. What you learned? No. The books you've written? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you're supposed to forget history, even though history repeats itself. Okay. Some Ohio news, folks. We're about ready to wrap this puppy up. Thank you for joining us. Share this video so more people are able to see it. So this is from a state representative here in Ohio. Her name is Jennifer Gross, I believe. The Ohio ballot proposal removes all parental choice without parental consent. It allows kids at any age to transition, girls at any age to have an abortion, and legally protects any person who helps them make these decisions without legal recourse. This is out of the National Review. Ohio's disastrous abortion ballot proposal. Let's go straight to the article, folks. Make sure this is popping up. It's not popping up. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that. And we're going to try to bring this article up because that happens from time to time. There's the article right here. We're going to allow that. Lost. Oh boy. Well, I didn't have this set up very well, did I? Okay, so we're going to have to go back to that Facebook article because this obviously isn't pulling up. Wow, this show or this broadcast or this podcast is going smashingly. Technical difficult. Actually, it's operator error. Let's be honest. Let's go back to that Facebook post from Jennifer Gross, state representative in Ohio. Very conservative. National Review. An anti-abortion rights protester speaks through a megaphone at a rally after the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in Columbus, Ohio, June 24th, 2022. No forced pregnancy. Honey, nobody's forcing you to get pregnant. Good night. Ooh, all right. So it's a public page. So let's read some of it. This proposal was sickening, evil, and disgusting. Can you post the proposal you speak of so we can read it for ourselves? Well, there's the article, National Review. I can't open the doggone thing. So anyway, go check that out too. You guys got a lot of homework tonight. I appreciate you watching, and I appreciate you downloading the podcast on Apple, Spotify. Anyway, all right, shut up, right? I think we're at the end of it, right? We're at the end of this news alert, this news break for everyone. That was up until Ohio. Now I'm going to go to the local politics, my hometown of Huber Heights. I am going to play the comments from the citizens who spoke at a water infrastructure issue. So if you're not into that, stop the video. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. But if you're interested, because this could be coming to a city near you, hopefully it doesn't. But we had the water issues that went worldwide from Flint, Michigan. Well, there's an infrastructure issue in the city of Huber Heights, some would say. And I'm going to play the citizens' comments because they're fantastic, well-informed citizens getting involved, standing up, utilizing their voice. And I hope more folks continue to do that. That is what's needed. That's how you bring sunshine to government, when everything is transparent and out in the open. I will say this. Your mayor did allow a lot of folks to talk, and that was good. It seemed a little different this meeting, I think. There was a lot more people are paying attention. A lot more people are paying attention in Huber Heights. They're standing up. Folks, you have to join together in order to get things done to move government, right? If you don't have the budgets the governments collect from you to fight these politicians and bureaucrats in order for them to actually do the work that the citizens and the residents need, well, you're out of luck. Anyway, it was excellent that the citizens spoke out. I can't say it enough. Continue to do it. Stand up with them. Pay attention. The more you pay attention, we all started from somewhere. Don't think, oh, you're not good enough. You're not smart enough, right? You are. Just pay attention. Let me share the citizens, and then we're going to end the podcast. We're going to end the broadcast when this is over. I hope you guys enjoyed. It may be long, so I'm going to just let it play out, and that's that. Thanks for watching, folks.
Not to say that other conversation might not come up, but anything at the moment. Okay, so this time we'd invite anyone who'd like to come to the podium and ask a question or clarify information. We've got, again, staff here, council's here. Mr. Campanella from the engineering firm, Burgess Nyepel's here as well to answer questions. So anything that anyone has, please feel free to come forward and we'll discuss whatever concerns you have. Yep, we just ask you to state your name. You don't have to tell us where you live or nothing like that. Just let us know who you are.
Linda Morin. The current phase one pipes, you said the ones that were ordered, the 14,000 feet, are zinc coated pipes. What are the current phase one that are being installed?
Zinc coated.
They are zinc coated. When we replace these pipes, the water pressure increase and the water softening cause these problems. When you replace the pipes, that's going to put additional pressure on older pipes elsewhere, correct?
No.
It's not. We're not going to have any problems.
Won't be any different.
Okay. Do we know why Ward 4 has such a problem?
The only thing we can tell it's from is corrosive soils in that area. Could have been bad pipe that we got when Huber put it in. The backfill he used, a lot of times they just, everything up there is pretty much just used native soil that came out, excavated material that came out of the trench. They threw back. We don't do that anymore. We surround the pipe with gravel and we use gravel as a backfill.
Okay. The money that residents have been paying in all these years for our water, why was there no replacement plan? I mean, nobody thinks pipes are going to last forever. What has happened to all that money? Because obviously it's not been put into a plan to replace. As a matter of fact, I think we drafted quite a bit of money out of the water fund a few years ago. So why was this money not set aside? Why have we not been in a replacement plan? Because it's my understanding corrosive soil is a new idea. I've been able to find studies on it that go back into the 60s. So why were we not looking to replace this?
We have. We started in 2010. We started a replacement program. And as I've said, a program typically is taking about 18 months to get through the whole process. Some of that was pipe delivery, but back then we were still only doing a program about once every 2 to 3 years. And at that time they were $1 to $2 million projects.
Okay.
So, and we do have a map that shows the pipes that we have replaced. Most of them are just south of the area. That's
Okay.
where we are having more breaks at that time.
All right. What happened to the money that we drafted out of the water fund?
At that time, we had budgeted for those projects. Out of the water fund to do that replacements.
No, it did not go to replacements. That I remember, but I don't remember where it went. Can someone on council remember?
I have no idea what you were talking about as far as water being, or money being drafted out of the water fund. I mean, we have an operating budget.
Mhm.
We have a capital portion of that budget dedicated to water main infrastructure. I've been here since late 2011. So for the last 11 plus years, and there has been no, as you call
There's
it,
been no
drafting.
excess that was taken and used elsewhere other than,
No,
water
water
infrastructure.
revenues that come in based on user fees have to be used for water projects. They can't be used on some other projects. The way we use fund accounting, you have to use the funds that come into that fund for projects in that fund. I can't take water money and use it in the sewer fund. I can't
so
take,
is new infrastructure, can it be used for that? Like if there's, when the Oaks were built, did the city lay water infrastructure down, and is that where that money for that comes from?
That's all paid for by the developer.
Every developer in this city.
Whenever
has
development,
paid-
yeah.
Every developer within our city limits has laid their own infrastructure without money from the city.
Yes.
Mr. Otto,
I may be wrong, Linda, but I believe that we've moved monies from water funds into the Carriage Trail Infrastructure Fund in the past to fund initial development, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's what you're referring
Is
to.
that,
okay. So why are we having to pay for their infrastructure and now we have to pay to replace our own?
can you ask that again?
Why did we pay to put in their water infrastructure and now we also have to pay to replace our own? You want to put it, you either want to jack my rates up, which are already ridiculous, which quite frankly, the water softening project, I'm sorry, I could replace many coffee pots a year for the amount of money that I am now paying because of the water softening project. So that's nothing that thrills me to begin with. But why do we now have to pay to replace our infrastructure when the money that had been built up was paid for theirs? Let them pay for our infrastructure. We paid for theirs.
Well, I can comment on that. I don't know if there are any residents in the room that are from the Carriage Trails development, but they have significantly high assessments in that district. So they are paying for their infrastructure.
And when that
was
money
put in.
comes back to the city, is it going back into the water fund or is it being used elsewhere?
It is temporarily being put into the TIF funds that was set up for that. And there is portions each year, you can look in our budget revenues, there are portions that come in as assessments that are set in the water fund, sewer fund, funds that are separated as they come in.
But the water money, when it comes back for the assessment for the water infrastructure up there, it goes back into the water fund and we've blown all that. There's no money for repairing or replacing current infrastructure.
So
You've got a whole lot of people south of 70 that have been paying a lot of years for water. And you've got a bunch of people in Ward 4 that have dirty water because every time there's a water main break, there's a boil advisory, or there should be. And now you're telling us you want to assess our homes or jack our water prices up even higher. I'm sorry. I'm absolutely against it.
So real quick. So I mean, these are staff members, right? So I think questions, this is not meant to be an interrogation. We're going to try to answer your questions. But questions that would go to staff, Brian, I think, can handle a lot of those questions. I mean, I think, because every decision that's made up here has either been from this council or from previous councils. And the staff is doing what this council and previous councils have been told to do based on legislation. So a direct interrogation of staff members doing what council has directed, I think is quite unfair for this particular
But it is getting
setup.
information out to city residents that are listening
Yes.
to this live stream that maybe in the past have not paid attention.
Yes, and that's the whole point of this. But I think questions either directed at council or to the city manager to be able to determine what legislation is.
He offered to
or
answer my
council.
question.
Well, I get it, but that was a direct line question there. And I'm not here to argue. I'm just trying to say, I think the line of questioning for staff members should be going to council or to the city manager.
Okay. Here's my question. What have you done with our money? And why are you now wanting to come to us for more? You want us to renew an income tax and you want to assess our homes or raise our water rates. Do you really think that people are going to stay in this city? That people are going to want to come to this city?
So
Well,
I think you need to look at your responsibilities. Clean water. Government is not here. It's for safety and utilities, like the water, because you all own the water. We own the water company. Okay? Not to develop properties, not to be real estate agents. And that's what I hear a lot of here instead of taking care of infrastructure. Thank you.
Brian, what was and I'd have to either ask you or Jim, like when the last assessment or when the last movement of city money went to Carriage Trails or whatever the different development agreements that were started in place back in early 2000s up through 2017, 2016.
correct. Yeah. The city has a series of agreements that date back, I believe it is till 2006, 2007. It was reconstituted with DEC when they purchased what was Bench Rock. And the city, based on the terms and conditions of that agreement, the city lent, is the best way to describe it. The city lent DEC resources, financial resources to construct to put the infrastructure in the ground to support that development. Under that agreement, which is a public document, DEC has a responsibility to repay the city over a number of years. The city is now done lending its resources to DEC, but DEC now has the responsibility to begin repaying those resources to the city, and will continue to repay those resources to the city over time. I believe the final payout's around 2035, 2034. Okay. So we will continue to receive those revenues back to the city. So we were the bank, and we lent to them under terms and conditions, and they are now repaying the loan to the city, and they will continue to pay through 2034. The monies that were lent to DEC will be returned to their respective funds over time, and we will have the benefit of the associated interest or other fees that were associated with those loans during the course of that agreement. So the money that was lent will be returned to the city. With respect to why the rates are what they are, I would encourage folks, and we'll put this information on the website, I would encourage folks to visit the website in the near future. We will be posting information from what is a regional utility rate survey that's been going on for decades. And if you look at the information, when it's available, you will note that Huber Heights is one of the leading communities in the lowest utility rates for a number of years. So this isn't an issue that the city accumulated all of this money and was not fiscally responsible with it. The city made an intentional decision through it set an intentional path through its policy decision to try and maintain the lowest utility rates within the region for as long as possible. We've now come to the point where we've had the benefit of low rates for numerous years, but the infrastructure that provides service needs to be replaced. And in exchange, in order to have the resources to be able to replace that infrastructure, we now have to begin raising rates. So I hope that answers the question. I think the chunk of the question, I think that you were trying to put forward, and that's your, and I can only offer the information that I can offer. Whether or not you choose to believe it is up to you. So.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, Glenn?
I want to clarify, I don't want to sound like I'm splitting hairs, Brian, but that money that was loaned, and somebody can correct me if my numbers are off, but I want to say the totality of the whole process was $10-11 million over time, is not being directly repaid by the developer, but rather the property owners as that is developed. So the new homeowners are repaying that loan, just to clarify. Correct? Correct. Okay, thank you.
Right there. So the contractor gets $10 million from the city as a loan to put pipe in the ground for a development. And then it's assessed to the folks that come on and buy property from the developer. So the developer's not paying for it. So the city said, you don't have to pay for it. We're going to make the people that live there pay for it. Oh, okay.
And I think that whole agreement came about because of the road, right? I mean, that was the main thing on the investment side up there, was because of what at that point was the older development of Bench Rock or whatever it was. That road went in, and the reason that agreement was made is because they took over that financing of that, what ended up being a $12 million road project.
Yes, it's my understanding that the driving factor was that At the time that the road was constructed, it was constructed to support what was supposed to be the bench rock development, and that did not materialize because of the recession. And DEC agreed to take on the financial responsibilities for those debts associated with that road. And in exchange for that, there were the conditions that the city would lend it the resources to help put in the public infrastructure that's up there now.
Anything else from council? Okay, anyone else like to come to the podium?
Jamie Lucier, Ward 6, 7320 Brant Vista. Nice presentation, Brian. That's good. Just 3 questions here real quick. The first one is on the success metric. When you say like 20 brakes per 100 miles is the desired, what's the time unit associated with that? I mean, is that per year, per decade, per month?
The metric that we were working from would be per year.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, and then for policy 2, does that really just focus on our current infrastructure here and what needs to be done, for improvements? Or is that taken into account
These citizens are so smart.
By the planned, housing development?
Lots of great questions.
For the initial visit of the presentation and for starting the discussion, the idea is that all things are constant. In this instance, we would not factor in, so let's say, example, and clearly as an example, we would put forward, let's say, a rate increase of 40% has to happen over a period of time. For the initial discussion, we would note that the rate increase would go 40% and it would maintain at 40%. It would be flat. The idea being that as growth occurs within the system, there are cost increases associated with operations over time based on inflation. So the new growth would effectively cover the inflationary costs, and therefore the rate metrics could remain consistent over time. That was our approach, or that would be our approach in some of these initial presentations. But again, as we get more specific direction and there's a commitment to a policy, staff and I would then work to get more specific and make more detailed projections, fine-tuning those figures over time.
All right. Okay. Thanks. And then just the last question. I don't remember when we did the pressure project north of 70. How was that funded?
That was before my time, but I believe there was an ODWA. Was it a loan, Jim, that the city had?
Okay. We had loans for that and the.
All right. But, I guess the point is that the city as a whole paid to do that. And, I live in Ward 6, so that doesn't affect me, but it's something we needed to do, obviously, the city. So, what I'm trying to say is that I think, with the pressure project, that was done north of 70. The city all chipped in for that. If you go with policy 3 here, what you're saying is Ward 4, you're on your own. And I think the optics of that's really bad. So I think we really need to come up with a way for the city to cover Ward 4 with everything that's going on there, and likewise, if something comes up in some other ward in the future, we do it that way too. Just my opinion. Okay. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate those comments. I think from reading the room, I think that's probably what most of this council would agree, that that's probably not the right way to go. That's my opinion. Yes, Jim?
I just wanted to make one additional comment on the last gentleman's statement. The city did not just go and pay for the water softening and the loans that we got for the water softening and for the water pressure. You might remember back in 2019 and 2020, there were 10% rate increases in each of those years to cover the debt payments that we have that are new that we didn't have before those 2 projects. So that is being covered by all the residents and businesses.
And those loans, don't we have a certain amount of reserve that has to be kept in the water fund based on the amount of debt?
It's for water bonds that we have, but not for those loans in particular, no.
Because those loans are being covered by what was the rate increase that happened to cover. So the whole city covered what, that was what, $12-13 million water pressure and water softening?
I think it was closer to
15 maybe? Or
was it 13? Yeah.
10 and 3. Okay. Anyone else like to come to the podium, please?
Hi, I'm Steve Zimmerman. Most of you know who I am. I keep hearing about this corrosive soil. Why is the soil so corrosive? Is it old landfill? Is it the pH? Is it an old pine forest? What's making it so corrosive? I mean, I drive by the Valley Crest landfill every day, that they're Superfund site that they're remediating, and it just got me thinking that I know we built a school on top of an old concrete plant. I just wondered if that's what we did with Ward 4, build it on top of a landfill or something. So why is it so corrosive?
Mr. Campanella, so part of that study, I know you talked a lot about corrosive soils. You had the map at the last presentation. Is this something you could speak to, kind of what the issue is or where it comes from?
Yes, Mayor Gore, members of council, and to the gentleman that asked the question, that information is based off of the native soils. So it's not based off of any man-made, whether it's landfills or other contamination. So the information actually comes from the United States Department of Agriculture. They maintain a soil database. They had done years and years of testing in order to compile the information that's in that database. And so it's mainly based on the minerals. The soil is very mineral rich. There are a lot of metals that are in the soil and things that interact with the outside surface of the pipe. So the corrosion is from the outside in. It's very typical that happens in any water system. It's just that in this area in particular, and really throughout Ohio, with the clay soil milk, that the chemical process that is just natural. As the city engineer mentioned, there's been a recognition of that, and I believe it was back in the mid-1970s that they changed their backfilling practices. So in other words, when they made a trench, dug a trench to lay the pipe, rather than continuing to put the native soil back onto that pipe, they would put gravel around that pipe to protect it from the native soils. That's the source of that information.
Okay, so it wasn't like actual soil samples from the site, it's from your database?
That's correct. Those are based on samples that took place. I would have to go back and look at the USDA information to see when they were taken, but they were actually based on soil borings that were taken in the past.
I just was concerned because if you know exactly what it is, then you know how to fight it, but it sounds like your database gives you that. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Hello, Rhonda Sumlin. So I just wanted to come up tonight. I am the chair of the Culture and Diversity Commission. And I just want to speak a little bit about the possibility that this become an environmental justice issue. So if residents of our community believe that their water is unsafe to drink, to bathe in, to use for purposes of cooking, I'm not saying that it is, but it could be. So that's something to consider. There are funds available. I did speak with someone at MVRPC. There is a grant that is available. It's an equity grant. I don't know that it's even something that we could apply for, but I think it would be good to take a look at it. So that's something that potentially we could apply for to see if there would be funds available to use towards an infrastructure project. Also, I know the EPA has grants available. So please keep those, keep those things in mind as well, because we do not want this to become a situation where it does become an environmental justice issue. That's all.
Thank you.
Did anybody else see
Kevin
the
Carter.
assistant city manager roll his eyes at that?
Okay, this is going to be kind of a crazy talk here because everything's all over the place. First thing I'd like to ask Mr. Tchaikovsky, over the last several months, we as residents have heard
Interim city manager,
or
I'm
seen
sorry.
comparisons of our water rates and sewer rates to everybody around us. And again, we see it again tonight. Okay, what I would like to know is I haven't seen any comparisons of what they are doing for their fixes, because all I hear here is raise rates, impose assessments, which I think is, as I mentioned back last month when I spoke, is completely ludicrous to impose it just on homes that are fed by those water lines. So I'd like to know, what are other cities doing to correct their water main issues? Are any of them, instead of rate increase, is anybody cutting anything? Like maybe a city hall or a civic center that's not really needed right now? Could we delay that and use monies that's focused for that and apply it over?
So that hasn't been a metric that we've looked at this point in time, but if that's something that council would like for us to do, we're happy to do that. Generally speaking, though, it is not considered a solid business practice for a municipality to invest general fund dollars to support its enterprise endeavors. That's just a general practice. Not that it isn't done, not that it can't be done, but just not a general practice.
Right, I get that, but when circumstances become abnormal, sometimes we need to look at things differently. And I'm wondering if anyone is going to actually give that consideration. I mean, yeah, I picked on City Hall. What about expansion to the east? What kind of investments do we have going on there? What kind of investments do we have in further expansions to the north? Is it time to put a stop to that and focus back on where we're
You've
at?
got
right
a
now?
lot of bright citizens in
Those are all
Huber.
policy directions that I get from
They know what they're
council,
talking about.
and based on the direction that I've received today, those aren't items that we as staff have been asked to consider as ways to fund these particular measures. I can respect yours and others' positions on assessments. My job is to make sure that council has all of the information to make the best decision that they can. And the purposes of tonight's discussion is not to advocate for one particular policy method over another, but to make them aware of the fact that those are options available to them when making their policy decision. So I want to make sure that everyone is aware that at this point in time, staff isn't advocating in one particular way or another, only to make sure that council has the information available to them on what options are available.
Okay, and then a question and a suggestion. I kind of got discombobulated a little bit when I heard what has been in the past, always been expressed as a 10% cost for engineering costs. And now all of a sudden it's 5%. And then we add in, depends on what kind of job it is. That coupled with, we saw a presentation of 1.8 million that was increased from 1.3 million. But yet in some discussions, well, no, it's 4.5 million. So now I'm seeing numbers thrown all over the place. And then we add in some of the discussions where you said, well, I took my decimal point off to the side. It was an error. I get all that. I think what we need to do is put everything that's being discussed on paper so that it's nice and clear in front of everybody's eyes, because trying to go back and research this meeting, previous meetings, to find out where all these numbers are coming from, and then what we're hearing here tonight, we need to get a very clear and concise scope so that everybody has a complete breakdown. And then now we take away, well, that said this back in, the 10%, 5% scenario is a perfect scenario or example. Let's eliminate all that and let's put everything out clear and concise on paper so that everybody has a chance to read it and then talk with their reps, ward reps and so forth. That would be a suggestion that I have. Now we're going to get back to some of the pipes. And this is where I am really, really confused. We hear what pipe is in, what pipe isn't in, what pipe is coming, what are we ordering? I've got you in a written comment, Mr. Gore, stating that we had all of this zinc coated pipe. I've got you, Mr. Brogman, saying we got the wrong pipe, but we're going to wrap it in plastic. Then I hear we're going to go ahead and put in the zinc coated pipe. What pipe is going in what project? Because in your statement, you said all jobs going forward will be zinc. A month and a half later, you are on tape saying, we ordered a different kind of pipe, but to compensate, we're going to wrap it in plastic. Now we're all questioning, is that plastic even going to be legit? Is it going to have what if it's torn? What pipe are we getting?
Okay, the only one that's not right at the moment zinc coated is the Mardi Gras project. It was 1,500 feet of pipe. It had been delayed, and we have grant money for that, which has a deadline to get the project done. So when it came in December, I believe it was, where we bid that one out, or a little bit before that, the contractor came back, and I thought we were going to be a long delay, but he came back and said he could get 1,500 feet, which isn't a lot, at Corn, Maine, which they had 2,000 feet in stock. And we decided to go with that simply to get the project done, because that one's been kind of in scrutiny for how long it's taking. And the fact that we could do it. And well, basically that's it. It was in stock and we needed to get the project done. So we decided to do that one in that manner without this.
So you said Mardi Gras is not zinc?
No. And I've said that all along ever since since the time it was bid after.
I think in writing, you've got that it is zinc for Mardi Gras, because we were questioning, and I think even Councilwoman Kitchen asked, wait a minute, why is Mardi Gras getting zinc pipe, but we're getting other pipes? And that's when you even answered back to her, well, yeah, we didn't order the right pipe because we were in a hurry, so therefore we're going to wrap that pipe in plastic. So Mardi Gras was getting zinc, other places were not.
So I'd like to be clear about the fact that it's not wrong pipe. Ductile iron pipe is a perfectly fine pipe to be used in this particular instance. Zinc coated ductile iron is the preferred pipe to be used based on the engineer's recommendation, because the zinc coating provides added life relative to the ductile iron. But ductile iron is not the wrong pipe.
I stand corrected. Okay. Bad choice of words on my part, calling it or classifying it as bad pipe.
At the moment, everything in our subdivisions is being put in as standard ductile iron pipe. We have not changed our standards yet for developers, which we're going to do.
Okay, so like with my recommendation for how we are trying to propose our options moving forward and such, getting them written down, can we get it written down exactly what we have, what pipe is going where to? There are so many questions out there. People are asking. Everyone's trying to talk. Let's just get it transparent and put it straight out so that we stop all that questioning.
The Mardi Gras is the only one that kind of changed because we had a kind of a deadline to get it done. And the pipe was there, so we decided to do it.
Okay. To go off the beaten path from the water lines, but this works in concession with. We're also, from what I understand, you said we're starting to see crumbling sewer lines. And I think
when
it was,
did I say that? I don't think I said that.
You got a project that you want to go in and do a spray line around on these sewer lines because they are starting to decay and corrode, fall apart, whatever terminology you want to use, and that liner is supposed to strengthen the pipe.
Yes, the liner is meant to be 50 to 75 year improvement to that pipe, started over basically.
Okay, maybe
yes,
Kevin,
we do have Tri-Cities, our wastewater company, runs cameras through all our lines every 5 years. So we have record of any of them that look like they're collapsing. There's some that are in bad shape. And that's the ones we're lining. We're doing $350,000 worth this year. And that gets you a lot of lining done, more than a replacement project.
Okay.
So
and
we're trying to do that every year now, like $300,000 to $400,000 of lining. And most of it's in the south area of the city because it's all clay pipe and not PVC pipe.
When you did your SIP lining on Longford, one of the first questions I had was, if you've got a pipe that is deteriorating on the exterior, putting a liner inside to me is like putting a fix-a-flat in a tire that's losing its tread. It's not going to hold. How is that different? Understand, we're not talking pressurized lines, but if you've got a line that is decaying and crumbling, how is that liner going to actually strengthen the pipe? Are we wasting money by doing lining on sewer lines versus replacement?
No. That would be very costly, first off, because most of those are over 10 feet deep, so it would be probably double the cost of water main replacement. Lining pipe is a standard that everybody's doing now. It lines from a manhole to a manhole, and it goes through the pipe, and they put either steam or really hot water that expands it out and it adheres to the inside of the pipe. If there's any pipes that have a certain level of collapse to it, we dig it up and fix it. So every year we usually do at least 5 to 10 of them that we fix before we line it. So that a lot of times the liner can't get through it for that reason too. But if a liner can get through it and it has a slight indentation on the top of it, in some cases, it goes through it and lines that to the outside or the inside of it, and it takes care of that and hardens up after it's done, and it becomes basically as good as a pipe. It's probably better than the clay pipe that's out there.
Okay. And then is it Kevin? Say, a question for you. On the model that you ran for us, did you receive input from the city as to what all variables you needed to put into that model to make your predictions?
That's correct. So this is available in the report that's posted if you want to review that. But the types of information that we received from the city included information about the attributes of the pipe. So the when it was installed, the type of material, and the size of the pipe as well. We also utilized the city's record of historical breaks that have occurred back to the year 2010. So the model is specific to the city system. We didn't use generic values.
Okay. Does demand on the system get calculated then for as to where you were expecting leaks or the number of leaks to occur? Because what I'm driving at is I'm wondering, I'd like to make sure that you are aware of all the mass build out that we currently have going on.
Mm-hmm.
And if that was all taken into consideration, because there's been debate whether if all of this extra demand is creating or not creating extra stress. To me, it makes sense that the more demand you put on the system, the more impact you are going to have on that system.
We did look at that aspect, not directly, but indirectly, if you will. I would say a couple things to answer that question. First is that even though there's been growth in the city, generally speaking, the pressure in the pipe does not change. It certainly doesn't change substantially. When you is like north of that's
right.
That was a one-time, a great change, 50% change in
Right,
the
it's
pressure.
just flow that you're going to be increasing.
Correct, yeah, but the changes that occur in growth are much smaller, and they, in our experience, they don't increase break rates in other communities, and we did not see changes in growth impact the break rate in Huber Heights. Following the presentation that we did, I believe it was February 21st, the council meeting where I presented. We did do some follow-up based on some comments from council. So we did look at the impacts of changing water use patterns when the pandemic started. And people were sent home, obviously, in March of 2020. We did not see any change in the break rate for the 3 or 4 months that followed that change in use patterns. So that was a confirmation to us that changes, subtle changes in water usage throughout the city didn't have a significant or detectable impact on the break rate.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. And then the last question I have, and I've heard it, I mean, we saw it in the presentation, our break rate for this year is currently down. Are there any thoughts? Because my fear is, we're just returning to normal. Is there possibly a driver? Are we getting into a lull period? Possibly. I guess I'm concerned that we're leaving it at that and not going further in detail as to what we might possibly still expect.
From our perspective, we do think there are a number of factors at play. And one of the recommendations in the report is to continue, as the city has done for quite some time, to monitor the break rate. But we expect two things directly to answer that question. One is we expect the pipe that's in the ground to continue to accelerate its deterioration rate. And the models predict that the break rate, if you did absolutely nothing at all to do replacement, the break rates would increase between 7 and 7.5% per year. So that's what the replacement program is designed to address. What we also expect is that the impact from the pressure project north of 270 and the changes that occurred when the Nebo Road water treatment plant was taken offline and the softening improvements went online in 2020, I believe, that those impacts will continue to subside. And so we've seen that occur since 2020. From 2020 to 21, there was a decrease. Also to 22, there was a decrease. Our expectation is that will continue to decrease. However, that needs to be confirmed. And that's where the recommendation to the city is to continue to monitor the break rates and to make sure that those impacts are temporary and they continue to subside.
Okay, and then to build on that question that Steve had asked about the sample analysis, have any recent bore samples been analyzed, or when the pipe has been removed, has the pipe been analyzed to see exactly where we stand? I mean, I understand historical trends, maybe that's what our soil was. All the construction and everything going on, has the chemical compositions changed? And are we possibly seeing something other than just corrosive soil?
I can only answer for the perspective of this project. We did not take project-specific soil borings. We wouldn't expect it to change. We wouldn't expect the soils within the chord of where the pipes are laid to change as a result of other projects. But I'd have to defer to the city engineer to see if other borings have taken place to address that question.
Have you ever given any consideration just to make sure? I don't know how costly they are, so it's just an off-the-wall question.
We haven't, but we could, I guess. But it's depending on where you want to take them and how many you want to take. Yes, it's a cost to all that. And whether it'll show anything different than what the soil maps that we have already, you could do a few and find out whether the soil maps are correct. And if you would have to assume then that the whole mapping system is correct.
Okay, yep. Like I said, it was just a off-the-wall question.
Bowser Moore is a soils engineering firm here in Huron Heights, actually, right? So if that's something that council wants to pursue, we could certainly do that.
Okay, and that's in closing. I just all council give serious consideration and they listen to the residents about the options 1, 2, and 3. I mean, we've got a rate increase, I think, effective next month. We've already had a couple. People aren't going to take too kind of continued rates, but the assessments to impose it just on certain residents, I think, is not. We need to toss that option out the window now, would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Richard?
Thank you, Mayor. That was actually one of my takeaways from a previous comment is I do believe this council needs to engage in some conversations with Bowser and Warner and take some updated soil samples in Ward 4 in that area. I think is very important for us to know what we're dealing with. Plus, it's good information that the engineer can have historically moving forward. And plus, I would be interested to see what Burgess and Nyepel gets back from the EPA and compare the historic samples from the updated samples that we would get. I think that would definitely tell a story.
I think that'd be the benefit of having some soil bores done to compare what the USDA map says, and is that what's still there? Correct. I think Russ said if we run a few samples and they're the same, they're correct, we could assume that the rest of the map is.
The soil shouldn't have changed. So if they did samples way back when, they should still be current, still be active, the same soil.
Ed, did you have a comment and then Don?
Yes, please.
Ed, then we'll go to Don.
Thank you. Mr. Carter, I just wanted to speak to you. I did appreciate your comments that you made, Mr. Carter. And as far as the rate increase, staff brought us a rate increase recently. I was on record as against it at the time. The reason is because I thought that even though they did bring us numbers, I thought that was a partial compared to the overall scope that we need to be looking at. So until I see the numbers for the overall project, I'm going to continue to be a no on that at this time. With that being said, we have a need we have to take a look at. I did appreciate the funding that we possibly have. I know Brian mentioned general fund money. We have water fund money. We have TIF fund money. And our budget and our financial standing is very good at this time based on the staff report of our budget at the end of last year and getting ready for 2023. So I want to see that. There was a comment Councilman Campbell had made previously, and I agreed at that time that I can see a water rate increase is necessary, but we didn't give an amount to it or a timetable. So I'm not writing a blank agreement that I'm going to vote for it, and obviously I haven't. But he did ask a question about if the city came up with $20 million for this water main replacement, and then we increase the funding or the cost to the residents citywide. What would that do with the cost? How much would it lower? And I don't believe, Brian, I've seen that response. I don't know if you gave it to Mark Campbell directly or if you sent it out in email. If you did, I missed it. But have you produced that request for information for $20 million, council money thrust into a city money, and then what that would do to the rates? Have you compiled that? Did I miss that?
I'm sorry. I don't understand the question.
Mark asked if we put $20 million into the water fund over a period of time, the water cost project over a period of time, what would that do with the rate increase? How much would that lower it? Was my general idea. I certainly will not speak for Councilman Campbell, but I was just looking for that particular information. Have you answered that?
No, I'm sorry. We haven't run that calculation at this time.
Okay, and that's fine. Sometimes we got a lot of emails. I might have missed it. Okay. So I know that's something that we're going to be working on and looking at, obviously. But I do want to look at the other funding and possibly what that can do to the rate increase before I increase it. The last comment on that is, yes, we have been hard work, but it's luxury for the residents, but it's hard work too over a period of time for previous councils, including this one, to have water and sewer rates very low in the region. I've never been a proponent just because we have low water and sewer rates to raise them just because they're low. There has to be a reason. There has to be a good reason, because I think that's just good business that the city provides for our residents to keep those rates low with good and excellent services. So a lot of what you had said, and I really appreciate the research and the knowledge you have, which is really good. I don't know what business and background you have, but certainly you're very knowledgeable. I just wanted to make those comments as we go forward about that particular part, because I know some council members are interested in, raising the rates as they should. And I did promise, I did say, I did agree that initially, and rightfully so, that I can see a rate increase coming, but I don't have an amount and I don't have a timetable yet. Right now, I'm a no vote until I see, and I'm convinced that it's necessary for a period of time and how much.
And where I came from, I agree, the rates here are extremely low.
Yeah.
But back in 2018, I believe it was, when Mr. Babkowski was here, and this was before the pressure and the water softener kicked in, his recommendation was to go ahead and start increasing rates to help cover costs of those two projects and for replacing pipes, because it was known at that time the water softening was going to create issues. So the rates did go up. I still have my bills when I first moved in here from 2018. We're up $4 or $5. But even though it's $1.50 here and $2 here, $3 here, now it's starting to add up. And in these hard economic times, that starts becoming more difficult, but then you still have that looming question is, of the money that was increased over the last couple of years to replace the pipes, where did that money go? And that was the last time I spoke last month, I had asked that question.
Okay, thank you. And I think that water rate increase was due to the water softening project, wasn't it?
Well, water softening was part of it, but then because it was known that the softening was going to create issues, it was also to start putting money aside for pipe replacement.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your comments, your questions, clarity, and I do completely agree that if we put all this in one particular spreadsheet, piece of paper, put a lot of the information in it, it's a one-stop shop. I do know we try to be, open, communicative, transparent, but it certainly would be simpler if it were easier to digest on a, more concentrated place. But thank you
Not
very
just
much.
for us as residents, I would hope as all of council, because this is all over the place.
Yeah,
How everyone's keeping track of everything, I have no idea. I mean, it's racking my brain out.
Thank you, Mayor.
Don, did you have a question? Then we'll come
I
back to
do.
Mark.
Thank you. This question is for Mr. Bergman. To follow up on Mr. Carter's comment, I'd like to talk about what happens when we have a water main repair or replacement. Do we do any type of forensics on what caused the break, what we find when we dig the hole and pull the pipe up?
No, we don't, because we don't pull the pipe up. We abandon the pipe. We plug it and abandon it. Because otherwise there'd be a lot of extra cost because there'd be another trench to dig it out. And your cost would go way up for that. Typically, we only tell it from the water main break. Usually I believe the gentleman that fixed it usually report what type of break it was. If it's a corrosion hole or if it's a shear break where it just cracks, they usually state what it is. So we know how many are corrosion and the other types.
Was that amount of information, that level of detail provided to Burgess and Nyepel as part of the study?
I believe so.
Was it?
That is correct. When we made the initial request to receive the break information, we made it clear we would exclude things that wouldn't be related to the degradation of the pipe. So if there were, for example, a contractor that was doing work in an area and they struck the pipe, obviously we would exclude that type of information. But City Engineer, correct. Initial request for information, we were clear that that was what we needed for the study, and I believe that's what they provided.
A follow-up then, for future repairs, is there any advantage to the city in collecting a soil sample at that time, sending it off and determining this level of corrosiveness?
I think from, as the engineer mentioned, when the repairs are done, that is the appropriate time to make an assessment about what type of break it was. I think it's, as he mentioned, we don't recommend when you do replacements that you dig up the old pipe for the same reasons that he stated. And as was stated before, I don't believe that collecting additional information on soil properties would provide value back for the investment, unless it's something that you can do opportunistically. If you're in doing a repair, you're at the pipe and you want to sample the soil rather while you're there doing the repair, you've already dug the trench, you've made that investment to do the repair, so that would be in an appropriate time to do that. But otherwise, we did not recommend in the study that additional borings be taken.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Don. Mark, and then back to Lynn. Mark?
Yeah, Kevin, at the last meeting when you gave your initial presentation, you had indicated that Huber Heights wasn't alone in having a group of pipes that needed to be serviced in some way, repaired, replaced. Is that true? Do I remember that?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the backlog of pipe that you described we had was about 20 million.
That's correct. And we did follow up following the last meeting to get a more precise number, which I sent to the city engineer. The exact, or I should say the approximate number was $19 million.
And what Mr. Lyons is referencing was something that we had asked at that meeting. What if we didn't replace the $20 million backlog, but spent money each year for a number of years? You had given a proposal to that. How much was it a year and for how many years? And what would that total over that period of time?
I believe if I understand the question, are you asking if you did make that $19 million investment or if you did not?
You did not.
Okay.
Your proposal was to pay so much a year, invest so much a year
Correct.
over a number of years.
We looked at a number of different investment strategies. Again, to give you the option, the option that we recommended took into account, at least at the time of the study, there was $2 million dedicated for 2023 in the budget. We recommended $4 million from 2024 to the end of the decade. The investment in the 30s would jump to $5 million. And then beyond that, throughout the planning horizon, the 40s and into the early 50s, it would drop down to about $4.25 million. So it is a consistent investment that would be required to stabilize the break rate to pre-2019 levels throughout the planning horizon, which we use 25 years as the planning horizon. And with even some of the scenarios that we presented in the report looked even closer to 50 years with the recommended investment.
And in that 25-year period, it might have been stated that it was $100+ million investment.
At no time did the annual investment reach more than the $5 million that we recommended in the 30s.
Yes.
And we recommended.
And then over that 25-year period, the investment in total would be how much?
Cumulative that yes, you're correct. It is closer to 100 million. And that is to replace a vast majority of the cast iron system.
And then the question was asked by council that I think you and Mr. Bergman and Brian are working on is if we replace the backlog of pipes for $20 million, it was stated that somewhere around $2 million a year or less would be the investment to maintain the system at that point. So you're working on what that total number might be over a 25-year period. And would it be less than the $100 million investment by not replacing the backlog of pipes initially?
After the council meeting on the 21st, we did go and review that as an alternate investment strategy. So 2023 would have to be followed by an investment of approximately $3.5 to $4 million per year. I think we said 3.7 is about the sweet spot. So I don't have that exact number in front of me, but I don't believe it would reduce the overall investment over the 25-year period substantially.
Okay. And then I have a question, if I could continue. Sure. For Jim Bell. Jim, is there any water debt that will be expiring anytime soon?
There are some bonds that will be retiring in 2025.
Okay. And do we know how much that debt service was originally, or the amount borrowed was originally?
That was back in 1995, and I don't know that number.
Is that a number that you could get for us?
I can get that for you, absolutely.
Okay. And Brian, tonight, your goal was to share with us options to address an expenditure that we know is going to be substantial over a 25-year period.
Correct.
And you're looking for policy direction on which plan to go with.
Correct.
At that point, you would reconcile the debt service that's falling off that we could point to satisfy some of that cost?
Correct. To some of the comments that we've heard tonight, yes, we would begin getting into the detail of what those numbers would look like for the specific purpose of we don't want to overpopulate information that will become irrelevant as we continue to deep dive into these things. So these are things, once we get direction from council, we would look to begin. When does debt pay off? What resource comes available? Hey, what is the, those types of things. So we would get into the detail as we move forward down whatever path council would ask us to go.
So this is a substantial number over a couple of decades. So we know there's going to have to be some additional revenue stream from somewhere, but you're not prepared tonight to talk about amount of rate increase or?
Correct. For the express comment we heard earlier, the numbers are all over the place. And so we want to be able to try and dial those numbers down and get them as specific as we can, or keep the wiggle on them as low as possible as we move forward.
And Kevin, during that process that council goes through, will you continue to partner with us?
We'd be happy to look at any alternate investment scenario that you'd like us to. Yes.
And Russ, my last question, Mayor. Russ, the Bowser Warner project where they would do some bore samples, is that something that could be done pretty quickly?
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks probably.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor.
Glenn?
Yeah, real brief question. I don't expect anybody to have this answer off the top of their head. I don't know if this go to Russ, Brian, but can I get the dates that the pressure upgrades north went online and the date that the softening went online? That's it. Thank you.
Anita?
I'm just curious, is Mardi Gras finished now? The replacement?
Yes, the pipes in the ground, the services have been connected to all the houses to the new line. The only thing left are waiting for the asphalt plants to open beginning of April. And then they'll pave the top of the trench. And then at that point, then they'll grind the whole road and repave the road. So about 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, I was just curious if it was done yet.
Nancy?
Would it be feasible for us to take those boring samples from construction sites that are going on now?
Like which ones you refer?
Well, I mean, we've got the
Are
one.
you talking about where the water meter's going in now? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, we can do it in that area, if that's what you mean.
I mean, we've got enough projects going on at different parts of the city. Wouldn't
Well, I
it
didn't
be-
know if you wanted to focus in Ward 4 or are you referring to the whole city?
No, I think if we do an area of Ward 4 and it matches what the USDA map says, then I think it's a fair assumption that the soils are going to match.
So if I did like
Every place
4 or
else.
5 in that ward?
Yeah, that's what I think I would be looking for. Richard, is that kind of what you had in mind too?
Mayor, I think that would be a good starting point.
Like Mary Meadows is available. You can go out there tomorrow and take a sample.
And again, I think certifications within 4, some of those have open ground now. I could easily see that report being back to us by mid-April, beginning of April.
And if they don't match, then we're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
now we need to do more. But if they match, I think that's a good assumption to make. Anita?
I was going to say, since Hubbard's had 17 breaks, are you guys totally done with the break from this weekend that you can't grab something up from there, since that's one area that's just really had it hard?
Yeah, we'll do one in that area. That's fine. We can do it right in the street. We'll just do a small quarry.
Do we know what that cost is? Does that need to be legislation or Brian is that something you can have done into your purview to spend without council action?
It
Okay.
should only be, it'd be 5 to 10,000.
Okay. Does anybody in council object to having Brian go ahead and do that? Okay, yeah, if you get 4 or 5 samples in that area of Ward 4 where they're currently under construction, that'll help.
Okay.
Don? Thank you, Mayor. Brian, just to get back to your presentation and the options you gave us, knowing that we'll be taking a look at this soon, will you be prepared to give us the details? For example, under your challenges, you note that we'll require additional staff. Will you be able to flesh all this out as we pursue these different options to let us know what we're talking about in terms of additional staff and costs, as well as the rate increase projections?
we'll be able to put together some basic numbers to work from to give you an idea of what you might expect. And then again, once we get some more specific direction, we'll get down into the detail, but we'll be able to give you some cursory numbers.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is, will we flesh out each of the three options a little bit so that we can see some numbers put with each of the options prior to council making a hard and fast decision on one of the three options?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So we had talked, I think, having that information available sometime during a work session in April. You'd be okay with that? I think clearly what the legislation or what the action for the 27th is going to be on the not to exceed of the 1 million, strictly for being able to engineer 36 months of work. That's going to need to be done regardless of how we pay for it.
Correct.
That engineering has to be done. So that's what we're going to see on the 27th.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Anyone else from the community like to speak?
Karen Bachman, Ward 4. I wasn't planning on speaking this evening, but here I am. We're at ground zero, unfortunately. We have 17 water main breaks on 3/4 of our street. We just actually finished up with our 17th just a few days ago. We had it 2 days in a row because unfortunately one of our neighbors, their service wasn't right. So they had to come back and redig. I just want to make sure that we're on record here because I have neighbors, I have people that are concerned, I have people that are texting me all the time asking me, what exactly are we receiving? Because I can tell you, I attend meetings, I do my research, I listen to people, words do count. So I just want everybody to know we're out here listening to you. We're taking our cues from what you folks are saying and what your staff is saying. So I can tell you, from last year, from July, from Mr. Chakowski, which thank you very much, and Mr. Berkman being at my house, along with a few other residents and a couple council people, Mr. Glenn Otto and Mrs. Kitchen, which I appreciate you coming over. What was stated last July, and then what was stated in November, and then what was stated in December at the town hall meeting. I know what was told to us, and what was told to us is that we're receiving non-zinc coated piping. We're getting ductile cast iron pipe with a bagging for the corrosive. That's what was stated. I can give you the time frame for which it was stated.
I don't remember saying the bagging. I know at one point you said on the other project, but yours was always zinc coated, and that's why the time delay was waiting for that pipe.
Okay, it was November 22nd at the 27-minute mark into the meeting. Go back and listen to it.
Well,
I'm only merely going by
I'm
what
not
I'm
disagreeing,
hearing.
but you're getting a better pipe, so
Okay, so I just want to make sure it's on record for everybody that's listening and all my neighbors that couldn't attend tonight, that we are getting, since we are in ground zero, and we have very corrosive soil, and we have had breaks because of that soil, I think it's highly important that we have zinc coated.
yeah, the whole project that we're doing right now, the 4 areas of the city, are all getting zinc coated. The pipe's already been delivered down at the water plant. And I can show you it's all zinc coated. You can tell by the end of the pipe, the bell part of the pipe has a zinc,
It's like,
silver, it's a silver color.
okay, it looked white or silver and the
it
rest
should-
of it is black, correct?
Yes, and it should say it on the pipe.
Okay, all right. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Paul Schaefer. Just one question. So we've talked about the $6 million every 18-month plan. When would that get the city to a break rate that is roughly 20 per 100 mile?
That's actually a question for Kevin.
That recommendation, I believe, is predicated on the notion, well, I know it is predicated on the notion that the break rate will continue to subside and the impacts of the changes that occurred in 2019 in 2020 will go back to 90s. And if that is the case, the break rate in the city pre-2019 was roughly 21 and a half breaks per 100 miles per year. So the investment strategy would stabilize that break rate at that level. We looked at a number of different scenarios where that break rate would then start to drop below that level at the end of, near the end of the planning horizon, which was 25 years. That was the planning horizon. So around the year 2047, 2048 is when the break rate would be below pre-2019 levels. Now, again, this bears very close monitoring, and I think I would not certainly go on record as saying we can commit to that. It does require, as it does in every water system, continued monitoring of the break rate to ensure. But based on the information that we have, that is what we are projecting.
So if everything works out really well and the rate comes back down to pre-19 levels and we don't see additional corrosion from water softening, et cetera, then we should see a break rate of around 20 per 100 in 25 years.
No, it would be around 21 breaks per 100 miles throughout that entire duration. There is a possibility that it can rise and fall. I think it's important to note what the city engineer mentioned earlier. So this is a little bit of a technical distinction. The investment, the specific pipes that we identified in the study, we had a prioritization system that was based on risk. So it looks at not just the rate at which the pipes break, but the consequences of those pipes. So pipes that serve hospitals, schools, multifamily houses, et cetera, receive a higher priority because the impacts of those breaks are higher. We did what city engineer stated is he would like to at least start this program by targeting pipes that have the highest break rate. And that is consistent with what many communities do. Some communities prioritize based on risk, others prioritize strictly based on the break rate to get control of the break rate first. And so there will be variations from what was specifically stated in the report if the idea is to target pipes with the highest break rate first.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else from the community like to speak? Yes.
Kevin Carter again. I'm sorry, I just got another question. Okay, so just to clarify, on the 2022 water main replacement project, the streets that are currently listed for replacement, they are all getting zinc coated?
Yes.
And then same with 2023?
Yes.
Okay. In my recommendation before about trying to get clarity on everything, can we also make sure we get a great dividing line between those two projects so that whenever they're discussed for money, pipe and everything, it seems like those two topics get blended? We just kind of seem to classify as a water main replacement, and then it comes back later, it's 2022 or it's 2023, so.
Right now, that's the whole reason we're doing this, the 18-month, because but trying to budget year to year, we found these projects take about 18 months. So if we run those cycles in 18-month cycles, we fund them in 18-month cycles, as Brian had mentioned, it'll be a lot easier to track what funding goes with which specific project.
Right, I get that. Just
rather than overlapping, but I agree. I think that's the whole reason we're doing this.
yeah. So
funding.
as we go forward, we make sure that we
Yes.
clearly signify which project we're talking on.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
One of the things we've asked is that we have a new method to identify these projects. So once council commits to whatever path forward, that we can start identifying these projects outside of what we're currently doing, which is based on the budget year, but now they're falling into multiple calendar years, and that's the confusion. So we recognize that, and rightly so, there is confusion within the community about what streets on what project and what project gets what pipe, because now they're starting to fall into the same calendar years, even though they're different budget cycles. So we're not ignorant to the fact that that confusion is out there. We're trying to find a way.
Project. I mean, we're 2023, but we're talking 2022, so.
Correct. So we're trying to find a way.
Eliminate all confusion.
Right. No, we're trying to find a way to do that as well. So,
Okay. Thank you.
sure.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Janelle Smith, and I do have quite a few questions. My first question is a little off topic. I didn't know I was going to ask this question, but at 8:05, Mr. Campbell texted or wrote a note to Councilwoman Burge and Baker, and I would actually like to ask for a public records request for that because that is subject to public records, being that it's happening at a meeting.
What?
And I think it does have something to do with this topic, and so I'm going to ask for a PRR for that right now. Please.
You are in error, ma'am.
No.
Yes, you are.
Phone is dead.
Yeah.
Okay. Notes.
And the appropriate process for a public records request would not be here, but, through our procedures for submitting.
Okay. So, on topic, so my understanding is the InfraSoft software used to map the perimeter of the city, the information that you got, you came from the city, correct? Were those numbers current numbers?
The information on the pipe attributes
Yes.
came from the most up-to-date information system that's maintained by the city.
And what
We
year is-
actually used the software to identify if there were any incoherent or missing values. We identified that information. We worked with the city to make sure that that information was populated. So that was, I believe, in roughly July or August of last year, when we started the study. It was the most up-to-date information that we have. And of course, the break data, as you know, we used all the way through July of 2022 as well. So that is the
Thank
most
you.
up-to-date data.
Great,
Yes.
thank you for it. You said there's a subsequent report. Do you know, where is that located? Because I did try to find that on the website.
The latest version of that report has been posted. It has not been updated in a number of months. I did mention that there was a question or two that came up at the council meeting on February 21st, that we did some additional investigation that was discussed this evening about what the resultant investment rate would be after 2023 if a investment of $19 million was made in 2023. That information was sent to the city engineer. We also followed up on a comment regarding the potential impacts of the pandemic. We also discussed that this evening. And that specific information, that analysis was also sent to the city engineer. But we were not intending to update the report with the latter of those two comments. I'd be happy to update the report with the investment strategy that includes the $19 million investment, but that has not been done at this time.
Wow, guys. Wow. Okay, the user rate. You gave us a report, you gave the city a report of who the highest user rates in the city as far as companies, businesses and such. Did this report take into consideration the 1,500, 2,000 apartments that are coming in? Because I know that later on in your report, you talked about, at 1 hour and 2 minutes, you talked about the impact of big projects coming in here. It's going to need to accelerate this program, or what you're proposing to council this evening.
That is not correct. Growth in the city will not impact the replacement rate for existing infrastructure. That would be new infrastructure and would not have an impact on the replacement of existing infrastructure.
You heard that, right? Huh. Interesting.
Okay, let me look at that. So would you recommend that the city try to use CIPP again for the water lines? Is that a recommendation that you approve?
No.
It is not. Okay. So would it surprise you to know that in 2020, the city spent over $800,000 on CIPP for our water consumption pipes?
I'm not aware of that. That was not part of
I
our
don't
study.
believe that's true. Concrete
It's-
pipe is used for storm sewer, if that's what you're referring to.
So as I heard somebody talk earlier about our sewer lines, I guess we're having some issues with our sewer lines. Can the sewer line failures infiltrate our waters and water lines? So for an example, how far apart are the water lines versus the sewer lines?
They're set 10 feet apart as per EPA standards.
Okay, 10 feet apart. That's
Is
not
that
very,
depth or is that, that's depth, correct?
No, that's
Width,
width.
but aren't the sewer lines? you
They're
said
eight-
like
They have to
10
be 18 inches apart
18 inches, that's it?
if they cross, yes.
So earlier you were talking about depth of the sewer. I thought you said they were like 10 feet. That's why that would.
The depth of sanitary sewer is about 10 feet. Now, I'm talking about from where the sanitary sewer over 10 feet away from that on the street would be the water main. Has to be 10 feet away.
Gotcha. So it's 10 feet deep versus how deep's the water main?
Water main's 4.5 feet.
4.5?
Yes.
And where they cross, they got to be 1.5 foot difference.
Yes.
So with all of the corrosive soil that we have, that we know, how long have we known we've had this kind of corrosive soil?
Last year or two.
Just last year or two. So since the city's been putting pipe in since 1956, we have never tested the soil or checked the pipes, because right now we're at the end of the age cycle, correct, for a lot of our pipes. So,
Well, no, I mean ductile iron, even cast iron pipe, if you look it up, it usually says 60 to 80, I think. But yeah, we're close to it, but a lot of it will still go on. It can go way over even what they,
do you think Hubbard could go way over?
well, certain areas could, yeah.
Well, right, because the area that we're talking about is your Ward 4, which is your most critical area, it looks like,
Right.
according to the map and according to the corrosive soil. So I'm just trying to figure out, it concerns me greatly, you guys. Mr. Lyons, would you please indulge me in repeating what you said about the process and that we missed the bids for the contracting this year already? That means they got to wait till next year?
No, we don't have to wait till next year, but the bidding process, January, February, March comes through. So city budgets all start January 1. Contractors get in line for their scheduling for the entire year. They lay out their work product, their equipment and all of that. So when we didn't send out the bid, we'll go to bidding of contractors, and then chances are the cost is going to go up because they've already bid out their year. And cost goes up, and then we get moved back to the end of the projects at the end of the year. And then there's materials, but yeah, it's not a good position for a city to be in. And we should have really been doing that in January. But like I mentioned, we sent out the bids for the sidewalk project instead of the water main replacement project. We could have done sooner. That's my opinion, yes.
I appreciate that. As I was listening to the February 21st meeting, it's been stated over and over that the city's been spending $1 million a year to lay new pipes. How much pipe installation does $1 million cover?
How much pipe does what?
$1 million cover?
How many feet? Probably.
Yeah, feet, thank you.
Okay, the project we're doing right now is 1.7 or 8 million, and then we're doing, I think, 8,000 to 9,000 feet. So,
And where have those pipes been installed? Where those, the new pipes that you're talking about, is that percentage of the numbers that you're talking about, new pipes being installed, is any of that north of town, or is this new pipes like throughout Ward 4, 5, 3?
the city isn't installing any new pipe. I mean, there's pipes being installed by developers, but the city itself is only installing pipe right now. Right at the moment, it's on Holbrook and Hellwig, and that's the first of the 4 we're going to be doing. And it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks for each one of those sections. Hubbard is the next one we're going to be working on.
Brian, could you get, so there was an email that you sent council that showed where those water line or water main replacement projects have happened back from, I think, 2011, 2012?
Yes.
Could we get that? Because I think that's what Ms. Smith is talking about. Could we get that particular map that shows the 2012 project, 2015, I think 2018, and maybe 2020?
I think it goes through
or 19
21,
or
maybe.
21. I think there was like 4 different sections outlined. It's all south of town where all of those replacement projects happened since 2011. That's the map that you sent to council?
Correct.
Could we get that on the city website, or could we make that available for everyone to see what has been done since 2011?
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. Also, we talked a lot about, you guys talked a lot about on the February 21st, the $1 million per year is proactive replacement. Is chasing water main breaks throughout the city, would that be considered efficient and proactive?
What I can tell you is that we did look at the break rate of pipe that was replaced versus the break rate of, or the average break rate of all the pipe in the system. And that the replacement program has been extremely effective. In other words, the break rate of the pipe that was replaced was roughly 7 times higher than the average break rate throughout the system. So I would classify the replacement program that was described over the last 10 years as very effective.
That's interesting. So I learned a lot by your presentation on the 21st of February, and I really appreciate your time in coming here. I learned more than I did the whole time I was on council, to be honest with you. So what I found was really interesting is when you worked for the city of Columbus, you talked about how important it was for all the department heads to speak together when you're doing a project like this. The reason why is logistics. You know, you gotta move your schedules around a little bit, right? So it wouldn't be very cost effective to probably pave roads that you never spring in a leak left and right, right? But unfortunately, that's what we've been doing. We've been paving roads as the residents here have been saying, please stop paving the roads. Please stop paving the roads in the high critical areas of breaks. It's wasting tax dollars. I believe Hubbard, when it got repaved in 2020, it lasted 6 days. 6 days. I'm just really disappointed. I did want to talk about some quick numbers. I believe in 2018, the correct numbers that we raised the water rate was 15% the first year, 15% the second year, and 4% every year after until whenever. So now we're going to do another rate increase possibly. What I'm really disappointed about, you guys, and what I see has not changed, is that this report came back in October of 2022. That was 5 months ago. It's taking 5 months for you guys to talk about this, but you didn't come prepared. Not everybody's got the answers. Nobody's got the numbers. They're all here waiting for the numbers, and there's no. I heard the word no follow-up a couple times. I heard no policy cost analysis for tonight. So we're all just guessing. You guys are just going to guess. Errors weren't corrected by this evening. You couldn't get with Ward 4 where a lot of these water main breaks are and correct an error that you made. You didn't think that was important to Mrs. Kitchen and her ward? Not carrying a decibel. You guys, this is a problem in this city, not carrying the decibel over. I believe that happened in 2017 as well. That was a several $1 million mistake. Well, I hope that you guys really take into consideration some of the things that the residents are really concerned about. If these pipes are as old as what we're being told, there should have been an action plan in place, not last year, not the year before that. Maybe 30 years ago, right? I mean, the water and the streets department is your baby, right? You are the senior most council member, Mr. Campbell. What happened?
I'll just say that, I mean, Janelle, this could have, you were on council in 2016, 2017, and 2018. Did you ever make a recommendation to increase water replacement, water pipeline, all this stuff? I mean,
I
there was
was a
3
no
years.
vote. I
there
was a no
3
vote,
years that-
sir.
There were
I'm
3
just
years that
telling
you
you
were on
straight,
council and you
I'm-
didn't make any recommendations either, so.
I'm not an engineer, sir.
Well, none of us
And I-
aren't either.
Yeah, but you pay engineers, you pay for studies, you're wasting tax dollars, you're wasting time. And for quite frankly, you might even be putting people in danger. Who knows? I mean,
I
if
think-
somebody tests positive for Serratia bacteria in their water, don't you think that's a problem? Don't you think people might want to know that?
I was just asking the engineer, do we have a water quality problem?
No, not at all.
And from the
It's
study
all
that,
checked, EPA, it's always checked by EPA. I mean, they do testing every day.
And residents
and I
pay
think
for
I did say
independent
before, I think
testing
we
as
have a
well.
distribution problem, not necessarily a quality problem.
But a
It's a quality
distribution problem
when
is the
it
same with the
breaks.
water flow problem, correct?
When it breaks, yes, there can be quality issues with the water because of the pressure, and that's why we do the boil advisories. But our problem is more of the distribution. It's the breaking of the pipe. And that's what this discussion's for. That's what the study's for. It's coming up with a plan to fix the pipe. And I think we are going to move forward. We're going to have legislation to engineer 36 months of pipe. We'll fund paying for the pipe, for the engineering, and put it to bid, and it'll be contracted and installed as quickly as it can be done. I mean, there is a plan in place.
But and that's something that you said on Facebook, is that, it was a right now. I don't think they're looking for right now. I think they're looking for right, not right now.
It is right. It's 8,000 feet of 8-inch zinc-coated pipe was ordered. It's at the water plant and it's stationed at Hellwig. And that's what's being installed in phase 1 of this project. The pipe that was ordered starting for phase 2, that's what's ordered, that's finished being engineered now, is all 8-inch water main zinc coated.
Okay, and that's the story this week. It changes like the weather in Ohio.
So could we get, so can we get an invoice from the pipe company that shows what we ordered? I mean, because we need to put this to bed too, because I mean, if we've all had these questions, give me an invoice that shows we ordered 8-inch pipe for X amount of feet that's zinc coated. And then would that be satisfactory?
So if somebody's got a recording that says staff and maybe somebody else said something otherwise, would that count as anything either?
Well, I'm looking for the invoice. The invoice shows what we bought. If I go to Meyer and I buy something, I get a receipt. It says what I bought. That's what I'm asking for. Anyone else like to come to the podium, please? Anything else from council? Okay, it is 8:47. Thank you much. Appreciate you coming. Thank you.